Carrie Lam says she wants to leave the government next year. Fresh concerns about the local economy. And François Fillon is the Conservative presidential candidate in France.
Good evening. Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam today expressed her wish to leave the government next year, as Elmi Lung reports that effectively puts an end to speculation that she plans to run for chief executive.
Will she throw her hat into the ring or not? Carrie Lam put paid to all that speculation today when she expressed her wish to leave the government after her term ends next year. The 20-minute speech I'm about to deliver should not be treated as an election campaign. I won't mind if you see it as my parting remarks, she said. Hong Kong's #2 official, who has 36 years of public service experience under her belt, highlighted her aspirations for Hong Kong and ways to maintain the city's advantages, such as upholding an independent judiciary and developing innovative technologies. She also defended Hong Kong's civil service as being outstanding. This after former Chief Secretary for Administration Anson Chan expressed concern that the traditional strengths of the civil service have been eroded in recent years. Zhang Yuxing also spoke at the forum, which was centered on future visions for Hong Kong. Commenting on the CE race, the former LegCo president said it'll take the fun out of politics if the ending is predictable. But he wasted no time in asking Regina Ip if she'll quit EXCO next month, implying she may soon gear up for her own election campaign. The New People's Party lawmaker would only say she is keen to serve Hong Kong and will make an announcement at an appropriate time. Further fueling speculation that he will run for the top job, John Tsang received a warm welcome from the head of the State Council's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Wang Guangya, in Beijing this afternoon. The financial secretary brushed aside reporters' questions on whether he had discussed his intention to join the CE race. Tsang and Wang had a 40-minute meeting. As for the chief executive, Leung Chun-ying today met with local members of the advisory body, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, to discuss his upcoming policy address. Elmi Long, TVB News.
Well, experts have painted a bleak economic outlook for Hong Kong next year. As Evelyn Leung reports, there are concerns the retail and tourism sectors will continue to struggle.
Local retail sales have dropped for 19 consecutive months now, and GDP growth has been modest. Some warn not to expect the economy to pick up anytime soon. Lau Hak-bun, director of sales operations of a jewelry chain, said sales have dropped by double digits this year compared with a year ago. As for the current quarter, Lau is not expecting a jump in sales either, even with the holiday season coming up. He explained in the last year or two, sales of high-priced goods have gone down because people won't make such purchases unless they have to. The wholesale and retail sector also feels the pinch. Wholesale and retail sector lawmaker Siu Ka-fai said with the drop in the value of the yen, more visitors will choose to go to Japan instead of coming to Hong Kong. He added the SAR is not as attractive as other Asian destinations like South Korea, so he does not expect the local tourism trade to pick up in the near future. Siu said the city's economy may only pick up in the beginning of next year at the earliest. Economist Andy Chuk is painting an even bleaker future. He said an expected increase in U.S. interest rates at the end of the year may lead to a further drop in the value of the yuan. That, he said, could lead to the unloading of the currency in offshore markets. Chuk explained this would affect investors' confidence in the currency and affect the mainland economy, which would in return affect Hong Kong's economy. He expects the SAR's economic growth to range between 1 and 1.5% next year. Evelyn Lang, TVB News.
For thought now, as a top local fast food chain announced higher earnings today, and as Elmi Leung reports, it sidestepped questions on whether prices will be lowered.
Disappointment perhaps for those hoping to save a few bucks by eating at a local fast food chain. This diner noticed prices at Café de Coro have increased in recent years. She said a pork chop rice dish, which used to cost $32, is now $39, and drinks are not included. With the chain's half-year profits gone up by 4.3% to almost $3.9 billion, any chance prices might be lowered. Its CEO Peter Lowe said instead the group will offer customers more choices. The group plans to open 11 more outlets and 8 more noodle and congee shops in the coming months. The group, which also owns the Spaghetti House and Oliver's Super Sandwiches, aims to hire an additional 1,000 staff. But the outlook for another local restaurant chain, Choi Hua, which operates in Macau and on the mainland, isn't looking so rosy. It posted a profit of $42 million in the 6-month period ending in September, a drop of almost 50% year-on-year. Revenue, meanwhile, eased slightly. Choi Hua attributed the weak performance to slower economic growth on the mainland, as well as a worsening retail sector and a drop in mainland visitor numbers here in Hong Kong. Still, the group is still looking to increase the number of its outlets here. Elmi Long, TVB News.
Turning overseas, hardline reformist François Fillon has scored a resounding victory in France's Conservative presidential primaries. It makes him the favourite to win next year's election against the far right and a deeply divided left. James Aitken reports.
The 62-year-old former prime minister rode a surprise surge in popularity in recent weeks to win a nationwide runoff for France's first-ever conservative presidential primary. He did it with promises of radical change and free market reforms.
La victoire me revient.
Victory is mine, a victory built on convictions, Fillon announced at campaign headquarters. Fillon, who is an admirer of late British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, wants to raise France's retirement age, cut back Social Security, and scrap the 35-hour work week.
At last, a candidate that can really make the difference. Until now, we really didn't have anyone. Here is coming with a project that is quite aggressive, but is much needed in today's situation and environment.
Fillon also promises to crack down on immigration and Islamic extremism. Those promises helped him beat his more moderate rival, Alain Juppé, capturing 66% of the vote. Juppé, who's also a former prime minister, congratulated Fillon and pledged his support ahead of the presidential election next May. The Republican Party will need that unity as Fillon bids to lead the Eurozone's second-largest economy. French voters are angry with chronically high unemployment and are still rattled about militant attacks. France has seen massive protests this year against President François Hollande's labor reforms, which are much milder than those proposed by Fillon. Fillon's toughest challenge will be far-right leader Marine Le Pen and her National Front Party, which is targeting immigrants and the European Union.
Qu'il assume totalement. Ça, c'est à la limite à son honneur.
The National Front's deputy leader says Fillon is a great rival to face because his economic proposals are outdated and will lead to chaos. Fillon, who has proposed warmer ties with Russia, also plans to scrap a tax on the wealthy and increase a sales tax. Recent polls have indicated Fillon would beat both Le Pen and the deeply unpopular Hollande if he runs in the presidential election. James Aitken, TVB News.
South Korean President Park Geun-hye's lawyer says she will not respond to a request by prosecutors to question her this week over an influence peddling scandal. Prosecutors had asked to grill her by tomorrow. But Park's lawyer says the embattled president had to deal with the fast-moving situation, so there was little time for her to cooperate with them. Park wants to prepare for an investigation by a special prosecutor that's expected next month, instead of responding to the current probe. Her friend and confidant, Choi Soon-sil, has been accused of using ties with the president to wield improper influence. Park has been resisting growing calls for her to resign.
Cubans will begin massing on Havana's Revolution Square later today for a week-long commemoration of Castro, who died last Friday. Cuban authorities have urged citizens to converge on the square to pay their respects to the man who led the island to revolution. Authorities are getting ready for Cuba's official 9-day period of mourning in honor of the late revolutionary leader Fidel Castro. Havana's Revolution Square will be the focal point both today and tomorrow, where Castro's urn will be displayed, allowing people to pay their last respects. Cuban authorities are planning official ceremonies of remembrance, allowing citizens and foreign diplomats to participate. The Communist Party newspaper, Grama, published an extensive list of planned street closures and information on how Cubans will be able to access the square. Authorities called on islanders to go there to make a solemn oath of fulfillment with the concept of the revolution. Castro was cremated on Saturday, and his ashes will be carried in a cortege to his final resting place in Santiago de Cuba, the city where he launched the revolution that carried him to power in 1959. That will happen on Sunday, officially ending the 9-day period of mourning. Since his death on Friday, state-run newspapers, television and radio have been running wall-to-wall tributes to Fidel, broadcasting non-stop footage of his speeches, interviews and foreign trips. Tourists in Cuba have been getting a first-hand look into the moment as they witness Cubans reacting to the death of Castro with a sense of calm and also a surge of national pride.
It is enjoyable to be sharing this historical time here in Cuba. I think the 21st century is can be an exciting time for the world.
Well, it's an important time for the Cuban people, actually for everyone. And we hope that it will also be a new beginning.
Havana's normally bustling street life and music scene has been quiet as the population acknowledges the solemn mood.
Still ahead in the news. Google Maps play down privacy concerns about upgraded features. Lawmakers against Disney expansion scheme. And meet the new World Formula One champion.
And a warm welcome back to TVB News. Starting today, Google Hong Kong will begin taking brand new images of the city for its Street View function. The tech giant says the update is necessary to keep up with the city's ever-changing cityscape. As Winner Wong reports, Google also played down privacy concerns.
Enter the Google Street View car. The internet service provider says it will once again be touring around the city to map out Hong Kong.
If you live in Hong Kong, you know this is a constantly changing city. So, you know, we're getting new roads built, we're having new buildings and new districts built as well. So there's always a need, I think, for the Street View to be updated every few years so that you get a more accurate representation of the changing face of the city.
Google says this time round, the streetcar will hit the roads in South Lantau for the very first time, which means images from places like Mui Wo, Ngong Ping and Pui O will be added to the collection.
You'll soon be able to see this Google Street View car roaming the streets of Hong Kong. The special device on top has 15 cameras, taking 360-degree images every 3 seconds, so people will be able to see the city from all angles.
Responding to privacy worries, Google assured the people of Hong Kong there is nothing to be concerned about.
Because during the post-processing period, all the human faces will be blurred and all the license plate will be blurred as well. And if any user have any suggestion to any of the content, they can use the report a problem feedback feature on Google Maps and write down their comments, submit to us, and we're going to review it carefully.
The tech giant added that it wants to help Hong Kong by promoting smarter tourism and smarter living through Street View. Winner Wong, TVB News.
Lawmakers have passed a non-binding motion calling on the government to postpone the $10.9 billion Disneyland expansion plan. They questioned why more than half of the bill will be footed by taxpayers and if there are alternative funding options. Rachel Lang reports.
The park's upgrade will include several new attractions to be built by 2023. According to the arrangement announced last week, taxpayers will foot more than half of the $10.9 billion price tag for the Hong Kong Disneyland expansion project. The plan for the government, which has a 53% stake in the theme park, to inject $5.8 billion needs to be approved by lawmakers first. But those at today's Economic Development Panel meeting were not keen on public money funding the upgrade.
While during the expansion, does it mean all the $10.9 billion will be invested in the Hong Kong Disneyland? Will some of the amounts be retained in the U.S.? While for the $10.9 billion, over 90% will be used in local procedures and also materials supplied by the third party, and also in purchase of materials and etc.
The Commerce and Economic Development Chief said the rest will be used for the park's works and designs, as well as franchise development. Lawmakers at the panel passed a non-binding motion, tabled by Michael Tian, calling on the government to postpone the expansion.
I'm not surprised about that, and I hope that the electoral member could really act fast. This is important that we enhance the competitiveness of a theme park in Hong Kong.
As the park's major shareholder, the government reiterated that the expansion would help attract up to 9.5 million visitors per year to the city by 2025. Rachel Lang, TVB News.
The Centre for Health Protection is investigating 3 suspected food poisoning outbreaks affecting 12 people. The first involved 2 men and 2 women who developed abdominal pain, vomiting, diarrhea and fever about 11 to 25 hours after having dinner at a food premises in Tsim Sha Tsui last Thursday. The second case involved 3 men and 2 women who developed similar symptoms about 12 to 19 hours after having dinner at the same food premises on the same day. The third included 2 men and 1 woman who developed similar symptoms about 23 to 39 hours after eating there as well. Health authorities are reminding the public to maintain personal, food and environmental hygiene to prevent foodborne diseases.
Turning overseas again, Philippine police have detonated a homemade bomb found in a trash bin near the U.S. Embassy in Manila. Investigators said militants sympathetic to Islamic State could have been responsible. Police say the device featured the same design as the one used in a September bomb attack that killed 15 people in the city of Davao, the president's hometown. Rebel fighters have been locked in a deadly standoff with the military in the country's south. Police suspect the Manila bomb was intended as a diversion to distract military operations away from the south. Since the Davao bombing, the Philippines has been under what is termed a state of lawlessness, allowing President Rodrigo Duterte to direct the military to support the police.
Voters in Switzerland have rejected a speedy exit from the country's nuclear energy program. In a referendum, nearly 55% of voters turned down an initiative that would have seen the last of 5 nuclear power plants shut in 2029. Concerns over losing energy independence outweighed safety concerns. Green groups were in favour of the plan, but it was opposed by the government and industry. Opponents said the plan could have led to blackouts, higher costs and dependence on coal-fired power from Germany.
To the latest now in the U.S. recount controversy. Election winner and President-elect Donald Trump has claimed, without providing evidence, that millions of people voted illegally in the November 8th ballot. And his team continues to speak out against a campaign by Green Party's Jill Stein, joined by the Democrats, to recount votes in up to 3 battleground states.
There is a respect for the process and the peaceful transition of power, which is why this recount by Jill Stein and now the Hillary people is just so confounding and disappointing. Their president, Barack Obama, is going to be in office for 8 more weeks, and they have to decide whether they're going to interfere with him finishing his business, interfere with the peaceful transfer of power to President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Pence, or if they're going to be a bunch of crybabies and sore losers about an election that they can't turn around.
English football's governing body has launched a review into an escalating child sex abuse scandal. That aims to find out what professional clubs knew about crimes being committed by coaches and what action should have been taken. It comes after recent allegations a former coach at some of England's biggest football clubs sexually molested teenage players during the 1970s and 80s.
Nothing at all can condone what has happened, and we have to make sure that that is a situation today and for the future. And that's not just words. We've got to put all these things in practice and be monitored from outside as well.
All right, Tony, some happier